Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Always happy to be picture in picture with this gentleman here, Mike Aresco, the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference. He has announced recently that he will be stepping away as commissioner of the American Athletic Conference. They are in their decade anniversary, 10 years. He's been here since before the conference had a name, before it had a logo. Came over when it was the old Big East, transitioned the entire conference, brought in institutions to make this a viable conference, lost institutions, brought new ones in, lost institutions, and brought more in again. He has always found a way to be a phoenix in the world of collegiate athletics. And so we have a lot to talk about today following the news that he will be stepping away. Mike, how we doing?
Oh, great to be with you, Dan. It's a quiet Friday, at least for now, but you never know, right?
Mike,
but yeah, great to be with you.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it as always. So, I mean, I got to ask you, why now? Why step away in this moment?
Yeah, it's time, Dan. I'll be 74 in May, and been doing this for 40 years. Been working for 50 years. I did some other things beforehand, so consequently, it's been a long, great journey. No issues there. I've been happy about it. The whole college scene has changed, but that's not why I'm leaving. I just think it's time to go. My wife and I want to do some things. We want to travel. We want to, visit our grandchildren a little more, do some things we haven't been able to do. I've been doing football for 40 something years. And, at that point, you really don't get to do anything in the fall. You're so, I don't want to say bogged down. You're invested in it and you just can't, get away. So there've been things we've wanted to do, and you just never know how much time you have. I mean, I'm in good health now and I feel energetic. I could still do this job. But it's just time to go. And Dan, there's always better to go out on your own terms than to get run out of town eventually. So I think it's good that at least I can do that. And they've been very gracious in the conference. Took some people by surprise because I still had some time to go on my contract and potentially could have, I guess, entered into another one. But at some point too, you want to pass the torch to people who are younger and are going to have more energy and more. I still have it, but it's not the same. And when you start thinking about retirement, and you start thinking about the things you want to do that you haven't been able to do, I think there you have to really take a hard look, and I decided it was just time to go.
And like you said, it's you weren't forced out. You made a decision to do this. I mean, you've been the face of the American Athletic Conference. You have led them on this P6 and then changing it to just power in general. You have worked diligently for over a decade in making an identity for this conference, building a new conference out of the shell of an old conference. All the work that you put forward, all the people that you have connected with, all of the presidents and chancellors and athletic directors, student athletes, coaches, this has been a passion project that has unfolded in the public sphere. How do you reflect on the fact that, all the work that you have done has been very tireless, very consuming, and at the same time, it's happened in front of everybody's eyes? I mean, we have seen this conference grow, and you have been the spearhead of this conference. How do you view the last decade and the fact that all of it, all of your work, a lot of people do work in the behind the scenes. The work of this conference is very much in front of a podium.
Well, it's a mixed thing, Dan. Reflecting on it, we've been incredibly successful, but we've also been the victim of our own success because we lost teams, right? Because we built them up, because the conference provided them a great platform to develop their programs, and they did it. I'm not going to argue they didn't do it and make the commitment, but I think the conference had a lot to do with it. And the way we ran the conference, the way we scheduled, the way we positioned the conference, the way we promoted the conference. And so we were a victim of that. And, but you still take great pride in the success we've had, because I never wanted our student athletes, as one of my guiding principles was I didn't want them to feel like second-class citizens. I didn't want them to feel they weren't nationally relevant. And we conquered that. They were They were absolutely nationally relevant. Might be a little tougher now with the portal and the year in residency going away. That kept our teams together, and it's going to be a little tougher. We get poached a lot more now, especially in football. But I think all in all, it was a great decade. Now, having said that, I'd like to see the conference continue to succeed, and thrive beyond me. You build something and you take great pride in it, and you got great people here, and you want to see it go forward and go to even new levels. Not that that's going to be easy. My successor, I think, will have even a tougher job in some ways. Well, my job was pretty tough to keep it together at the beginning, and then to fight, for the relevance and the recognition all those years, and to deal with realignment so many times. But I think even my successor may have to deal with realignment again. This whole ACC thing is fraught. You just don't know what's going to happen in college sports. But again, having said that, I still think the conference has a great future. I'll try to help a little bit, but I don't want to. I don't want to get in the way of the new commissioner, Dan, and I don't want to be a full-time consultant. If they want me to help out in certain areas, of course I would, because this conference means a lot to me. And it's a great group, and it's a different group. It's not quite the same group that we started with. 5 of the original 12 teams will be gone as of next year. On the other hand, we've added 6 terrific teams, including now Army 7. And we're thrilled to have Army. So the conference, I think, is poised to do okay and to thrive, and also in this climate to endure, because I don't know, you never know when you're going to lose some teams or when there's going to be more realignment. But we're deep now, we're strong. We're still, I think, viewed as the premier P5 conference in terms of our revenues, in terms of our TV exposure, in terms of a lot of things. Competitively, you just never know from time to time. You just never know. But I'll always feel a great pride, but also I'll also feel a great guess the word is always take interest in what the conference is doing. I won't have to grind away every time and worry about every single game and and deal with every crisis that comes along, but I'll be rooting for the conference. Let's put it that way.
So here's a 2-part question for you. Are you calling me as a candidate to be the next commissioner? And if not, who should be the next commissioner?
Well, if you want to throw your hat in the ring, I'll give you the give you the names of our executive committee. That's the one thing I did want to avoid is anointing a successor or identifying a successor or picking a successor. They do want me to be involved to the extent that, I could give them some insights, and there might be some people I know that they're looking at, and maybe I have some opinions. I've been around a long time. I think we'd all like to find someone who I think understands who we are, what we have tried to do, what we're going to continue to try to do, and also who understands our culture and who will be good. I think we have an excellent staff here, and I'd like to see somebody who works well with our staff. I think we've got a good staff. We don't have office politics here. We've got a great group. They work hard. They represent the conference well. I would want somebody to come in and I hope not, they may want some of their own people, but you hope that they don't disrupt that culture. And then finally, they've got to promote the conference, Dan. I've been on with you. I don't know how many times over the years. I've been on Sirius Radio countless times. I've been with Feinbaum. I've talked to every reporter known to man, right? I've done everything I possibly could. But I also promoted the conference based on, I think, facts, based on what we actually did. Yeah. And, I have a photographic memory. I tend to remember all the different things. And that's useful when you're doing these conversations. But you have to have somebody who's willing to be aggressive and fight for the conference, because no one's going to do it for you. And you have to, do it in a way that is credible. You can't just say, oh, we're great, and not give any reasons why. And sometimes you have to, stand back. I mean, there have been a few years when maybe we haven't been quite as dominant as we were other years. But this year, when the SMU situation developed, I had to get involved. I just felt it was important to promote the conference and promote SMU because they deserved it. And I talked about all the reasons why they should have been in the New Year's Six. That happened many times over the years with the playoff, as you know. Yeah. But more than that, there have been other times when just wanted people to know what we were doing. Also, I would hope the new commissioner develops a strong relationship with ESPN and CBS in basketball. ESPN has been crucial to our growth and development. They're great people. We have great relationship with them. We've weathered realignment with their help. They've been terrific. We provide great value, but they've been good to us. And that relationship, I hope, continues because it's really critical to the conference. And then finally, you have a good group here. I've been lucky, Dan. There've been a lot of presidents turning over in our conference, and all the new ones have been terrific. I mean, I've had great relationships with all of them. Same thing with ADs. We haven't lost quite as many ADs as presidents, which is a little surprising. But one cloud on the horizon, we lost coaches, and we replaced them, often with very good ones. Coaches that built programs, built sustainable success, because a Mike Norvell replaces Justin Fuente, right?
Yeah.
You had a Luke Fickle come in, and you had others come in. The problem now is we're also losing players. We're getting players poached, not just coaches, and that's your heart. That's the heartbeat of your conference. That's the biggest thing. And I don't know the answer yet. We can bring in a lot of transfers. I don't like the chaos that's going on. I don't like the kids at 5 or 6 different schools, or maybe I'm exaggerating, but at least 4, maybe 5, some of them. I don't think it's healthy. I don't think a lot of what's going on is healthy. And yet we've got to find answers. We've got to find an accommodation that allows college sports to be at least something similar to what it was. People love those games, Dan. I mean, we all love to watch football. I mean, people are going to not watch Ohio State USC because it's a Big Ten game.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you bring it up, Mike. I mean, so many things that are going on. You said you made this decision on your own. This was something that you wanted to do. You're in your 70s. You want to spend time with your wife. I can't help but ask you, though. I mean, we've had so many conversations where I'm sure it was stressful. I'm sure higher blood pressure, high octane stuff. I mean, you banged the drum for this conference, and like you said, gave it factual background. You've done that over a decade here on Wake Up Call with me. You've been very candid at all times. You've been open. You've answered all my questions. You haven't shied away from anything. You didn't give me a political answer. You've had to deal with a lot, though. So is the current state of realignment and, the Big Ten having almost 20 schools, the ACC, some people trying to potentially get out of their grant of rights, the SEC having 16, all of these things shifting around, that plus NIL, plus the transfer portal, and plus the fact that we're having an expanded college football playoff. But now the conversation is it 6 automatic of the highest ranked conference champions plus 6 at large, or is it going to be 5 and then 7 at large because there's no Pac-12 anymore? Did all of this kind of storm of chaos, did this at least have something to do with you going, I've had the high blood pressure, I've had the decade of doing this, I've banged the drum forever, and now I feel like college athletics is so out of control that I'm going to step away? Is there any connection to that?
No, there it really isn't. And I know that some people might find that disingenuous. They might say, well, it has to have had some impact on your decision. No, it didn't. Could it have? Sure. I mean, there's no question that you say, wait a minute, but I'm up for those challenges. The problem is I am getting older. I'm the travel starts to get to you. My wife and I, from mid-September on, if every weekend at a game, every weekend here, I go to countless meetings. We just had the NCAA convention. We've had other things, and so at some point you just say, look, I think it's time. I don't know. We never know. Our health is good, but you never know. Anything can happen. You get into your 70s. There are things we'd like to do that we've been putting off for a long time. Might be nice, be honest with you, Dan, to wake up in the morning and not have 30 or 40 voicemails, emails, texts, combination of those to deal with. In terms of the other issues, I mean, I think it's a challenge that I'd be willing to take on if I were younger and I were, not really ready to move on. So I don't think that's it. It really isn't. And I'll miss the people. You know, a lot of them are gone. A lot of the people I dealt with over a 40-year career in sports, and I've had a 50-year career working because I did a lot of things before sports for a decade. Um, a lot of them are gone, but a lot are still here, and a number of them are good friends, and I'm going to miss them, no question about it. I'll probably miss some of the day to day, but I'm in peace with the decision. And it's not because of what's happened. It's because of timing. And I talked to my wife a few years ago and said, you know, I'm not going to go. And she said, well, I can be the fall guy if you want, you know, tell everybody that I just want you to retire. And she did want me to retire at some point, but it was really my decision. And she's been great and supportive. Um, so, you know, I could have retired a year ago. You know, we've got a place in Sun Valley. We love it. We love doing stuff there. And I often found the last few, not so much the last few years, but the last few months, once I was there, I felt comfortable. I said, why do I have to go anywhere? You know, and that's when you sort of know. I mean, Nick Saban talked about what prompted him to retire, right? Some of the things, and he's at the top of his game and does not have to retire, right? You know, I feel that there are a lot of challenges coming for this conference. If I were younger, I'd absolutely be, you know, fighting a good fight, but it's time to let somebody else do it. And somebody else that, you know, probably has more energy and, you know, a longer runway than certainly I would have. And, sometimes some new blood's good, and a new person can take this thing to higher levels than I was able to. You know, I had some disappointments along the way. You know, we had some competitive heartbreak here and there, and as well as we did, you know, we didn't get to be a so-called autonomy conference, but we were ready to make the big push that I think probably would have succeeded, but for realignment hitting when it did. And that could get restarted down the road, Dan. It's not out of the question. I think we would all plan to do that at some point. But on the other hand, I think I would have stayed on if I thought the conference was in really bad shape and needed some shoring up, but I don't think it is. You know, we got Army in, we've got a good group of schools. They're all investing. Things, you know, we know there's some realignment coming down the road, but it's probably not going to come imminently. It'll be down the road. We got a nice office here in Dallas now. We're in good shape, got a great staff, one of the best staffs I think I've had in a long time, maybe the best I've ever had. And so consequently, things are in good shape. It's not a bad time to leave in that sense. We'll see.
Yeah, you know, and before I let you go here with Mike Aresco, the only commissioner we've ever had with the American Athletic Conference, you make all of these moves, you do all of these things, and you work tirelessly. You write a letter to college football about the need for a college football playoff expansion. You see the American Athletic Conference in the college football playoff represented by Cincinnati. You bring in Navy, who had been independent for over a century. You're now bringing in Army, who's been independent for over a century when it comes to football. There are so many huge things that have happened with this conference and that go beyond simple season wins and losses. The Navy move, the Army move, getting in the college football playoff, everything that we've seen some tremendous coaches come through here, incredible student athletes, people that are playing professionally now. You know, there's so much to be said that if we go outside of the win-loss column and we look at the quality and the caliber of people within this conference that have spoken so highly of you, there's a lot to be stated in the respect of this, and why any of the institutions or coaches want to be poached by anybody comes from what you and your team have built in this conference. Why SMU is valuable, why Houston's valuable, why UCF and Cincinnati are valuable. So, you know, when I look back on over a decade, Mike, you didn't talk about it. You were all about it. It was talk about it, be about it. You were always about it. You went after it with morals and values. And it seemed like you didn't try to cut corners. You didn't try to do people dirty. You didn't try to get bad politics and nasty business. So not only do I think that you made a bunch of huge moves that were integral in keeping this conference afloat and even having it be a conference in the first place, but you did it with integrity and you did it with morality. And I think that is something above everything that we should appreciate.
Well, that's awfully kind of you to say, Dan. I mean, that's very flattering, and I really, it's much appreciated. But I think, in the end, we've had good sportsmanship for the most part in this conference, and at times when things broke down a little, we were very, very firm. I think, think when we had some scuffles during games, bowl games or whatever, we cracked down, and
Yeah.
our schools bought into that. They went along with that. They did not want to have a reputation that we were at all going to tolerate that. But more than that, the way I would sum it up, without getting too, global here, is we were a conference, of a very unusual situation. We were born out of realignment. We were the old Big East, though, and we did have a core. But I thought that core with the new schools was strong enough to really be a player with the other 5 conferences. Now, if that wasn't the case, then we'd have been spinning our wheels, and we might have even done damage by trying to be something we could never be, right? But we were there. Competitively, we were right there. And while we had to strain financially, and we finally got a TV deal worth 450% more than our original one, which granted was undervalued, we were able to do that. So the first thing was the vision made some sense. A vision has to make sense. If we suddenly said we're going to be the SEC tomorrow, that's crazy, and it'd be a futile quest, and it would do more harm than good. But our quest made some sense. And then the second part of this was the most unusual situation I've ever been in. And I'm not talking about the fact that I had schools that were not, the marquee schools in the college football firmament over the years, or even basketball. Well, basketball, we probably had a lot more of that, clearly. We had some marquee value that we didn't have in football. I handled all the big schools and the big brands for 30 something years. I programmed all the big conferences at ESPN, and I programmed the SEC and others and other big games at CBS. So I knew what the big guys were like. And suddenly I was in a situation where I had to promote so-called little guys, right? The guys that maybe didn't get the attention or didn't get the exposure. And so I set my mind to doing that. And I said, the heck with, I've got a different challenge here, and I've got to accept that. And then finally, what really made this different, it wasn't so much that as this, because of realignment, because of the kind of Darwinian nature of college sports, I knew that virtually every school in our conference wanted to leave if they had the opportunity to go to a P5 conference or to go to a conference that had more money, more revenue, right? More exposure. That was just a fact of life. You could ask any one of them and they would be honest with you and say, sure, if we got a call from the Big Ten or the SEC or the, Big 12 or the ACC, and in the old days, the Pac-12, when it existed, they would have gone. And so I knew that. And so how do you maintain camaraderie like that? How do you get people to come together? Well, you try to instill the concept that, hey, the best conference is the one you're in. Support that conference, make it good, make it the best you can be, and it'll reflect well on you. It'll redound to your benefit, to your credit. And if you do that, you're going to help yourself, but you're also going to help the larger group. And the other thing was making sure that the camaraderie remained. I didn't get angry with my guys for feeling that way. I mean, how do you feel when, kind of everybody, I've never been part of anything. At ESPN, we were growing, everybody wanted to be there. At CBS, everybody wanted to be with us. We were in a golden age, with Sean McManus running it. And so I never had that experience. And then all of a sudden, here I am. The Big East might not have been that way if it had stayed together, but with this new group, it was like, wow, we've got to somehow, we're not P5 anymore. We're not BCS anymore. We've got to get back, right? So my goal was to get them back if I could. But I knew even then, other conferences are always going to have more money because of the nature of the situation. And I knew they'd want to go. And when we had that horrible dog and pony show back in 2016 with the Big 12, you remember that? It went on for months, auditioning teams, very public. It was tough. It was my job to say, look, guys, I understand. I know why you're doing it. You're not going to offend me. You're not going to cause me a problem. It may not look good at times. It may, not reflect necessarily well on the conference, but that's okay. I understand where you are. And I think that helped hold the conference together, and the fact that when people left, we never took it personally.
Yeah.
We had to be gracious and had to understand, like, they're all still friends. Gerald Turner was the rock of our conference as a president for 10 years. And all of a sudden, because he's going to the ACC, I'm supposed to disown him and act as though, we're enemies now? No, of course not. We're going to continue to be friends. The same thing with Cincinnati, UCF, Houston. Kelvin Sampson was one of the great people supporting our conference, right? Renew Couture, the president of Renew and Gerald go back to the very beginning. Cincinnati, Neville Pinto, and then the ADs there were terrific. Chris Pesman and others. So you really have to just, and by the way, it wasn't easy. No, I'm human. I mean, you don't like to see people leave. You don't like to see people looking for greener pastures. You don't like people to not necessarily feel that this is their permanent home. But that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
And you just had to deal with it.
So final note here, Mike, I mean, you're obviously going to be with us through the 2023-24 academic year. You got some more time, obviously, as the leader of the American Athletic Conference. Where is the AAC stationed in the expanded college football playoff? How confident are you that there is going to be representation moving forward in an expanded playoff? And what are the biggest issues affecting collegiate athletics as you have a few more months to be a part of this?
Yeah, I think in terms of the playoff and all, it gives us an opportunity we didn't have, because 8 out of 10 years we'd have been in it, and probably should have been in it this year if there was an expanded playoff. It'll be a fight like it always has been. It's never been easy. We, sometimes by the skin of our teeth, we got in with terrific teams, because, you're dealing with 50 or 60 other teams that are fighting you for that spot. So it's not going to be easy by any means. And yet there is an opportunity, and we're a good conference. And if we maintain that reputation, then I think a team winning our conference, with a good record will have a shot. As far as college sports goes, Dan, we're getting really, really hurt by court decisions, by legislators jumping in areas where maybe they shouldn't. We are at a point where we've professionalized this thing, and it's heading toward even more professionalization, which I don't know. Again, people love to watch the games. I'm not sure they're going to care that much that a player's getting paid this or that, but it's all the transferring, all the different things, all the dislocation, all the chaos. It's not necessarily good for what we're doing. And it's not really what college sports was meant to be. So I'm hoping, as I said, we can find an accommodation for that, because right now it's become pay to play. We don't want employee status. We'd rather avoid unionization, because that's tough on coaches and the kind of development they're trying to do for their kids. It's hard when you have that dynamic to work with. It's one thing in professional sports where these are, adults of, they're all in their mid 20s, late 20s, 30s. It's not, you're not talking about 18, 19, 20-year-old youngsters who are still developing and still, getting their footing in life. And, they get a tremendous education, and they get a tremendous sense of their potential and their training. I mean, people like Nick Saban have, as Nick said, these kids created value for themselves with his guidance, and that's a great thing. But the sheer professionalization of it is probably going to lead to some things that aren't necessarily good. So we've got to try to figure out some accommodation there. And then finally, we're going to have the gambling thing is going to be, I just worry about it. It's something that we're going to have to try to get a handle on. We do have integrity services looking into everything, and maybe we can deal with it. And I hope we can. I mean, I don't want to be pessimistic about that, but I do think it's definitely an issue going forward. And then finally, there's this whole business of realignment. I mean, how much consolidation can we bear before it just gets ridiculous? It's not the college sports anymore. I love the golden age of the CFA when you had all these different conferences and they were all regionally based. Those days are gone, but they don't have to be completely gone. And if we can work through that, I think that will help us. And then, you also have the issue related, in addition to realignment, you have the idea that some schools just don't have the money to compete anymore. And can we keep Olympic sports as healthy as they've been? Can we do those things in view of these court decisions that could potentially bankrupt us? I'd like to see some antitrust protection, because I'm tired of the courts, and the courts don't seem to understand that we're a competitive enterprise, Dan.
Yeah.
I think you understand it. we've developed competitive equity for 40 years. We don't want 110 schools to be kind of out in the cold and only 10 schools dominating everything because they can generate they can bring in all the players, they can generate all the best talent. That's not what you want. And that's what I think we're heading toward, unless you get some standards. All of life has some restrictions in it, right? We can't all just do exactly what we want. And that's not a bad thing, but to have just chaos and have complete, it's not even freedom anymore, it's just license to do anything you want, in college sports is not the way you're going to get the kind of, structure that you want. So those are the kinds of things I think and there are others. I mean, there are clearly going to be others. It's not just realignment. It's other things that are going to have an impact on us all. The P5, G5 divide is something I've bemoaned for a long time. Is it really great to have half your football players, being made to feel like they're second-class citizens? Like all these guys talking about a G5 playoff. I don't want a G5 playoff. We're not a separate group. We compete at the highest level. If you're FCS, you understand you're FCS, and that's fine. And boy, it's great. FCS has great football and great competition, but that's not who we are. And so that's another. I've been trying to get that point across without really the kind of success I would like in terms of just let's try to make sure that everybody's included in this and everybody. The NFL's genius has been that the Green Bay Packers, a little place, up in Wisconsin, was treated the same way. We're treated the same way as the New York Giants or the Dallas Cowboys, right? The Tennessee Titans and the Carolina Panthers and the Jacksonville Jaguars are treated the same way as the Chicago Bears and the Washington Redskins and big market teams like LA. And it's genius because everybody cares about all their games. When an NFL game is on, people watch it. They don't necessarily care which teams are playing because they don't really feel anybody is a second-class citizen who's not worth watching, right? And so, that's something that I would like to see also be addressed by the people in college athletics. What happens to the NCAA long term? I don't know. That's more a structural thing. I think there'll be some form of NCAA. You have to have some regulation, and that's my final point, Dan. Be nice if the courts, the legislatures would have let us handle our business within a certain parameter, within reason. We didn't do anything that was really bad in my view. Okay.
Yeah.
NIL, you can see why we didn't want NIL because all it became is pay to play immediately.
Yeah.
True NIL get rid of collectives as far as I'm concerned, with true NIL, a few guys might get endorsements here and there or get into a video game and get some money for it. But you wouldn't have what you have now, which is essentially pay to recruit. I don't care what you call it. That's what's going on. No one's kidding anyone. You can fudge it. You can say it's not really that, but that's what it is. And so that's troubling. That's something that I think we're going to have to deal with. But do I think that people just love college football and college basketball and some of the other sports? You're seeing tremendous interest in women's basketball. You're seeing tremendous interest in gymnastics and in hockey and in softball and all sorts of other sports, volleyball. Great interest. People love to watch sports. They love college sports. I hope they still think it's college sports because if they ultimately don't at some point, then you might have a problem.
Yeah, a lot of great points, a lot of great words. As always, I know you have a busy go up here with the schedule, but I want to just make one final point. I know you and I will be talking soon, and I'm sure we'll have many more to discuss. I have an idea that I will shoot you a message about that I think would be really great to do with you, but I just want to say this in this conversation in closing, and I'm not saying this because you're on the screen. I'm saying this to the world because it's true. I'm saying it to the God I believe in. You believed in me over a decade ago when I was building my business. When I was building from scratch, you were building from scratch. When you were creating something that didn't exist, I was creating something that didn't exist. And you and I talked about it in Rhode Island. We stood in that room. You treated me with kindness, with generosity. You have always been open, honest. You've always made time for me. You have made me feel like the red carpet's been rolled out every single time. The content of your character has never been questioned by me, nor has there ever been a reason to question that. And I put my arm around you over a decade ago, and I said, Mike, we're redheaded stepkids. We're going to do this thing together. And you have done this with me this whole time, whether you're doing this, you're, hanging out in Sun Valley, or, whatever you may be doing in your life. You always have a place on this show. You always have a friend in me. You always have an opportunity to get a response back to every phone call and every text message. I can't adequately say in a closing remark here all of the things that you have done right, but just know that you took a young man and have seen me grow throughout this process, and you have been a huge part of this. You have been a massive piece of my coverage to the nation and to the world. And because of you, my life is exponentially better. My career has taken huge paths. I have inroads with fantastic people all over the place. You will never know the opportunities, the bridges, and the amazing relationships that you created simply by being kind to me and consistently doing that. I am indebted to you forever that you saw something in me and cared about it enough to facilitate it, to grow it, to fan the flame, and to always be in my corner. And because of people like you, whatever success I have in my life, I will always turn back to people like yourself and say that you were a part of it.
Well, Dan, that's awfully gracious and awfully nice. But I'm thrilled for your success. I'm really happy that you've had a great show that's grown. And Dan, when we first got together, you were sincere. You had a true interest in the conference. And why wouldn't I reciprocate that? And by the way, the fact that you may not have the following of a Sirius Radio or Feinbaum is irrelevant to me. You do a great show. You've got a good following, but even if you didn't, I think you do a great job. You're knowledgeable. You always know what the right questions to ask. You followed our conference. You supported our conference. You actually, it's kind of mutual. You actually showed interest in us, and I was happy when anyone did. And yet, you also showed that you would do the research. You do the homework. I've enjoyed being on your show because one, I'm talking to somebody who does know the issues, who does know what's going on, who did have a real interest in our conference. And why wouldn't I be on with you regularly? And you're a good person, you're a good guy, and that really makes a difference, I'm sure, to your listeners, to your viewers. You've got the interests of college sports at heart. Not everybody does. And it's been a pleasure to be on with you. And that's the thing. I'll miss, maybe in retirement you'll have me on as a throwback, but the point is I definitely miss some of the the interaction I've had. And with you being on your show has been a lot of fun over the years. I've always wanted to make time for it because, again, it's a chance to talk about the issues with someone I like, I respect, and also who understands what we're trying to do here. And that's critical. I'm thrilled that your show's done well. You deserve to have the show do well. You put a lot into it. Somebody once said, if you're not sincere, you're nothing, and I think you sincerely care about what you do. That's why the show has been successful. So no, really, you shouldn't be thanking me. You should be pleased with what you've done. And I just, been happy to be a part of it. And, I hope you have years and years of success. I'm sure you will. And I hope my successor appears on the show as much as I did, if you'll have them, or her. Could be a woman. We don't know who's going to be the commissioner, but whatever happens, I hope that they continue that tremendous relationship that we've had, and appreciate your friendship. That's the other thing, been getting a lot of, notes and calls from people I've dealt with, after 40 years. I mean, even people that probably don't like you will send something nice to you just to be nice, But the point is, I've got a lot of friends who've said a lot of nice things and who've sent a lot of nice messages, and I will miss that part of it. I mean, you wouldn't be human if you didn't. But it's been great to be, and many. The reason I mention it is many have said we've become friends. It's not just a business relationship, And your friendship means something. And I've seen you on the road from time to time. But again, continued success with your show.
Yeah, everything with you too as well, Mike. Please give my best to your family, to your wife. And I don't blame her. I blame the fact that you guys want to do nice things together. So the blame is off of her. But you and I will be talking soon. Thank you for all of your tremendous and kind words, and I take them to heart. They mean a lot to me. And you're in a list. There's been a lot of people on the show. You are on a very short list off by itself that is always close to my heart and always top of mind. And I can't say it enough that you are one of the good ones. and you are somebody that could have been a janitor, a pilot, or a commissioner. The fact that I got to cross paths with you is a blessing from God. I don't take it lightly, and you will always have a spot on the show. But more than anything else, I hope I get invited to Sun Valley to at least sit on the porch for a minute. So
You have an open invitation to come anytime. You absolutely do. And again, you've done a great job with the show, and I hope you continue to get great guests because I know they enjoy being on. And I've seen some of your clips, where you've had some really interesting people who've made some news, and all the best. And to you and your family too, Dan. All the best going forward. Have a great, rewarding year. Again, I've got 5 months to go. I'm sure that we'll have a chance to chat. Be a few issues down the road. CFP still has to get wrapped up. That may even happen during my tenure, and how we resolve that. And there'll be some other issues too. So I look forward to it. And thanks again. Have a great weekend in the meantime.
yeah, you too. Be well as always, Mike. Thank you for everything.
Great.
God bless. And
Thank
take
you,
care.
Dan.
Thanks.
Take care. Hang in there.
You too.